So Dana, I don't know if you remember this, but a few years ago on Palm Sunday, we went down to the local farmer's market. We took some palms and we had this grand plan of teaching people how to make origami crosses out of these palms. It's like a Sunday school thing you did in the 80s or something like that. But we were like, we're going to bring the love of God to the farmer's market into our community. And we get down there and it's a beautiful day and we're sitting at the table. Mm-hmm. Not one person could we get to make a origami cross.
Not one.
We couldn't even give them away. We ended up making them and we couldn't even give them
Nobody
away.
wanted our palm crosses.
No.
I do remember that. I do remember it. And I remember, you brought 200 of those palm branches.
And I was stressed. I was like, we're going to run out. I'm not going to have enough.
There's going to be lines wrapped around the picnic benches.
That was in my head for sure.
Wow. We just sometimes our hearts are so good, but we are so misguided in our ideas and we get stuck in our little bubble, right? Our little world. And we forget that there's a big outside world that could care less about making palm crosses.
In reflecting on it, I realized that because we are so steeped in the church life and tradition, Palm Sunday is this really big day to us. And we thought it would be for other people. But I think part of it is that maybe not everybody quite knows what Palm Sunday is.
Right.
And I think, especially because people go to church on Sundays, people go to church on Palm Sunday and then Easter, a lot gets missed in the Holy Week story, which is kind of Jesus's march to the cross through Jerusalem. So,
and that's where we're going to go today. So hold on. This is the Collective Table. I'm Dana Black.
And I'm Chelsea Simon.
And we're excited to have this conversation with you about Holy Week.
At this table, there is no fear. You are not erased. At this table, you're welcome here. You are not erased. You will find your place at this table.
Okay, so we're going to jump into this conversation about Holy Week, and we want to have a warning. A warning's going to flash up. We're going to do this in about 20 to 25 minutes, and that is not nearly enough time to really cover everything. So you're going to get really kind of the surface level idea of Holy Week. Hopefully, if you've had questions about words that you've heard or people that you've heard, you'll get a basic glimpse. And then we'll have more resources for you on our website, and we'll also offer a couple at the end.
Yeah, I think our hope is that we're just going to put the puzzle pieces together that kind of lead you to the cross and then eventually to Easter.
Right. So with that, let's talk about Passion Palm Sunday, or as I grew up, it was often called Palm Sunday. What is it?
Yeah, I really almost think it's it's the start of the march to the cross. So Jesus is walking to Jerusalem. Now he gets there.
Yep.
And there's kind of these two things we're holding, right? There's a group of people that love Jesus, that believe that he, is doing something great. And then there's another group of people that are obviously afraid of him and his power and his influence and are kind of wanting to see what he's going to do next. And so this is kind of a culmination of all of that happening right in this Palm Sunday. And we talked about too, if you read throughout the Gospels, Jesus is doing all of these teaching and miracles, all these big things are happening. And typically at the end, you see Jesus say, don't tell anybody. The time has not come for people to really widespread know. This is the first day on Palm Sunday where he kind of accepts his fate.
Yes.
That it's time people know who he is, and he faces the consequences of what that is.
Right. So he now acknowledges that he is entering Jerusalem, and this is the journey to the cross.
Right. This starts
and he goes in, and most people are familiar, if not with the donkey or the colt that he asks his disciples to go get, and he comes in on. And I think you're absolutely right. There's a crowd of people there who are so happy that he's entering Jerusalem.
Waving palms, putting down their jackets. It's a parade in his honor.
Yep.
Hosanna in the highest.
But there's also both religious leaders and the empire, the political of the time, who are not happy that this person has has been causing quite a bit of disruption in the surrounding small communities. But yet the disruption is going to continue.
Right. Well, now you can imagine they're watching this. Like, not only is this guy saying radical things and like going up against empire, but now he has these crowd of people who are lifting him up and are really followers, it seems. So you can see how they would be a little bit nervous when they see this Palm Sunday type of parade.
And as he comes into the week, one of the first things he does is a pretty radical, disruptive activity. He goes to the temple, the Jewish temple, which is this critical place for the Jewish people. It's their religious home. It's sacred. It's not like there's temples all over the place.
Yeah.
This is the main place, but it's also the seat of a lot of political connection to the religious leaders at the time. So it's holding both of these powers. And he goes to that temple and does what?
He clears it out.
He clears it out.
Flips the tables.
Flips those tables.
He sees people, there's people selling things. There's people taking advantage of people, upselling pigeons and doves, which are used for sacrifices at that time. So you have these poor people who are faithfully trying to do the thing they believe God is asking them to do. And then you have these other people taking advantage of them in this sacred place.
In this sacred place. So this is not your local, church who's trying to sell some baked goods or rummage sales for a mission project.
Right.
These are people who are selling a sacred item for a sacrifice, and they're making money off of it. They're profiting, and they're not keeping the space holy. And he's pissed off.
And I love this version of Jesus because
too.
so often I think we put Jesus in a box of being nice. Like we think Jesus is, and I'm sure Jesus was nice, but I think so many times like compassion and true love, it is this righteous anger. I mean, he's looking at these poor people being taken advantage of. It would almost be wrong to not react
angry.
that way. And so it's just this counter image that I think we typically have of Jesus, where Jesus, you were saying earlier, in the Gospel of John, he comes in with whips, I mean, it's this intense anger.
Yes.
And I think sometimes we are misguided in righteous anger.
Yeah, he's angry at the system, as he should be, as we should be. Like
Right.
it's an example
Right.
of how we can be angry at the system.
Yeah, and radically stand up to it.
Absolutely. So you have this, and of course, this is not going to be seen favorably by the empire, those that are in control of the politics, as well as the religious leaders. And so it's a very controversial time. And so there's several other actions that he does as well throughout this week, but we're not going to be able to name all of them. Yeah. So now we want to get into what oftentimes people have heard as Maundy or Holy Thursday. Mm-hmm. Maundy is a word that means command or commandment, and this is the time where Jesus gives his disciples the commandment to love one another.
And nothing, it's on full display when he decides to wash his disciples' feet. Yeah. And you got to imagine that those are some gnarly feet walking around those roads with sandals. And Jesus, I mean, this is the role, the act of a servant. And he kneels and he washes their feet. And you just imagine the humility that comes with doing something like that.
Yeah.
And also having your feet washed. We've both had our feet washed and have washed others' feet. And so there is a humility in both roles. We see Peter, one of his disciples, kind of have a reaction to it. No, you're not going to wash my feet. And
right. Let me wash yours.
Yeah, right. And I've had similar experiences to that too, where something in me is just not me.
No, I think it's a very humbling experience. I've done it before. And so I 100% agree. And I think there's that act that happens. And then, of course, there's the communion act that happens with the bread and the wine and Jesus sharing his last words. And I do think it's important to think, you had mentioned this. This is his last night. This is his last night. And what does he do on his last night on earth?
Right. Like we think like, okay, if this was my last night on earth, I would stuff my face with Taco Bell or go to the Pacific Ocean or do that last thing that I want to do. And Jesus knew that this was his last night on earth, and he decides to wash feet.
He washes feet.
And like what a beautiful example. And not only does he wash feet, he tells us that this is what love looks like, that this servant attitude is what love looks like. And I just so often wonder if we could shift some of our relationships and our lives to have this servant heart.
What it would look like.
What it would look like. Like I imagine with my husband, if I could really be like a servant, have that attitude. And with your boss or with your coworkers or with your teachers, whoever it is in your life, if you had a servant heart, a servant attitude, how that might change.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the most beautiful pieces that comes out of this. And at this time, I think it's also important. There's a lot of individuals or characters in this story. We'll have resources available online, but I do think it's important to highlight that after all of this is happening, Jesus wants to pray. He asks his disciples to pray, but a lot of you probably have heard of Judas and Peter during this time. Judas is the one who betrays Jesus and turns him into the Roman authorities. And so you're thinking about what that looks like for him. And then also Peter ultimately denies Jesus 3 times in this narrative.
Both men that have been with him on the journey have followed him, have seen his miracles and teachings, know who this person is. Both have similar reactions as far as like betrayal and denial. I mean, they're kind of, similar related. And of course, Judas and Peter have 2 different end stories.
They sure do. Totally opposite end stories.
Yeah, right.
But I think it's important for me to think about all these, and then we'll talk a little bit about Mary Magdalene and the Mother Mary. But all these people are in us. We have elements of all of them within us, and so I just think it's beautiful to read this entire narrative to see like we are those people. We are those flawed, broken people in this story.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes we're denying Jesus. Sometimes we're betraying Jesus. Sometimes we're sitting at the feet of Jesus. I mean, we're all over.
Yeah.
All of these people exist in us at different times. Maybe the same time at some points.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And there are a lot of characters, and in such an intense time, it really helps to put yourself in their shoes and really try to see life from their perspective and how we might respond to Jesus now.
Yeah. So then that gets us to the cross. And I think we want to like, wow. So this is already a fast enough moving conversation. Right. But the cross is a whole nother area of complexity. And so we will release a standalone podcast on Good Friday that will talk about the cross, because there's just so many ways to think about it. But I do think it's important to maybe leave people with a little bit of how we think about the cross, because it can resonate in different ways.
Yeah. And for me, it took me a long time to kind of hone in on my theology of the cross, or what I really think the cross is. I think a lot of us are taught that it was, we needed Jesus' blood for somehow God to love us or forgive us, or that we needed that sacrifice to be right with God. And I just don't feel that way. I don't think you feel that way. Really, it's love on display. We have to remind ourselves that God did not kill Jesus. We did.
Humans did.
And Jesus, submitted to what that was.
Yeah. And that's, there's a quote that we'll share by Richard Rohr. And then again, I think we'll get into this more when we do our separate episode. But the cross was not necessary, but a pure gift so that humanity could witness God's outflowing love in dramatic form. Yeah. And that is probably controversial for some people to hear, and probably even some of the things that we say, because it's not perhaps what your tradition what your experience has been in your tradition, but it is definitely, we look at it as a love. It is full love.
Yeah. Yeah. Doesn't make it easy.
And
a lot of times we talk about, we so often want to skip the pain.
That's right.
We want to live in Palm Sunday and we want to live in Easter, and we don't want to go through the cross.
That's right.
But there's no resurrection without the cross.
None.
And we keep telling, and I'm almost laughing at us right now, because we had to remind ourselves in preparing for this conversation, we're not going to talk about Easter. We're not going to go there. We're going to sit with Good Friday, because the disciples, the people that were around Jesus, had to sit with Good Friday.
They sure did.
Not knowing Easter was coming, even though Jesus had told them time and time again. But we have to go through the pain. We have to go through the cross to get to the joy of the resurrection.
Yeah, and I think that's why, we're not going to end on a super happy note, but we end on a note where, they're feeling lost, maybe feeling alone, uncomfortable, sad, grief. I mean, you have Mary, the mother of Christ, and Mary Magdalene often are portrayed at the foot of the cross in just complete grief and overwhelmed by sadness. And you have Peter and Judas and the other disciples who are dispersed all over. And it's a liminal space for sure. I love that word, and we've used that before. And as we kind of get into Saturday, we're kind of in this space of just blah. I don't understand other way to.
And I really do to go back to the empathy model of like what was going on.
Yeah.
I can't imagine taking Jesus's body from the cross to the tomb, and leaving it there, like real grief and real fear. Just all the emotions that we come across when someone has left, but not knowing.
And that's where it's left. And it dawned on me, it was interesting. Like we are now, like we started COVID a year ago at this time, and now we're getting to a point where we see a little bit of a light, but we don't really know what all of this is going to look like. I mean, we still have to be careful. People are getting vaccinated, thank God, but we still have to be careful. And, are variants going to show up? So it's still an unsure, uncertain time.
It feels like Saturday.
Yeah.
Like it feels like this last year has been painful, right? I mean, if you've had people die or not, there's still been these griefs, right? Like births, like people have missed births and graduations and proms and family, been separated from family. So the last year has been painful. And while we believe we're Easter people and resurrection's coming, we don't know what it looks like on the other side.
That's
yet.
right. Yeah.
And so we're living in this weird pause of liminal space where we're trying to trust, but what do we,
right.
we don't know what
threshold.
to expect.
We don't know. We haven't walked through, but yeah.
Yeah. And so it's just, it really does. It feels like we're living in Saturday right now.
Yeah. And so I think with that, again, what can people leave with? I mean, some people have heard this before. Some people have never heard this. Some people are like, oh yeah, I remember hearing about Palm Sunday and, Judas and Pete. Like, what do we do with all this?
Yeah, and there's so much that we didn't even cover,
Oh
right?
my heavens, nothing.
A couple years ago, I found a great documentary on PBS called The Last Days of Jesus, and it really walks through exactly Palm Sunday through the resurrection. And so I would recommend that if you Google it. I'm sure you can find it, but it really walks through what Holy Week looked like and what the different groups of people were kind of feeling and thinking and going through at the time. But I would really recommend that resource for kind of a deeper dive.
Yeah, and we'll try to make a link available on the website as well so that people can access that. And then I also thought, what if you actually considered washing someone's feet in your household? Mm-hmm. So I'll even keep it within your family. What would it be like to actually wash your husband's feet or your wife's feet or your partner or your child or maybe your mom or dad?
Wow, yeah.
I
knew about this couple who got married and during their wedding ceremony washed each other's feet. And I just wondered what that would do for that marriage, to enter into a way that was a servant heart. And I think about washing my husband's feet and how that would just be such a humbling moment for both of us.
Oh, yeah.
And such a, vulnerable for sure. Like there's even anxiety thinking about it. But what if I leaned into that kind of humility?
All right. I love that. So I think with that, we'll close up this episode and know that there will be a separate conversation on the cross that we'll put out on Good Friday. We are so excited that you're here. If you enjoy what you're hearing, you enjoy what you're seeing, please refer a friend. Please forward it on to someone. The more the merrier.
We love to be in conversation with whoever wants to be in conversation with us.
Absolutely. And you can email us at info@thecollectivetable.org. If you have questions, if you're confused on something, we'd love to engage with you.
So we just want to also remind you that Mystic Mercy will have a new song coming out, meditation from Erica, art by Jennifer. We have a couple more Lenten resources as we close out Lent, which Holy Week closes out Lent. A book suggestion, and just some other resources to help you really dive deep into this Holy Week. So we hope that you will check them out as well.
Absolutely. So don't hesitate to connect with us in some way, shape, or form. Subscribe to our podcast or our YouTube channel, and we look forward to seeing you next time with our conversation.